Hello internet, Taliesin here, and today we're talking old gods. Not old gods, fake old gods, new old gods, old gods, and the newest raid in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth, Uldir. And if you're anything like me, you'll have some major questions about this new raid. Like, if Uldir turns out to be rubbish, do we all get to refer to it as oh dear from now on? Not that I want it to be rubbish, you understand, it's just that I would really enjoy that pun, so if it were to be rubbish, that's not the worst thing that could happen, that's all I'm saying. But, you know, also practical questions like, what are the strategies I need to beat this boss? And what do you mean I can only buy 2 reroll tokens per week? Piss off, mate, that's nonsense. Next thing you'll be telling me I have to use them on Mythic Plus loot too. Oh wait, you are saying that? I knew it, this is the worst expansion ever, I told you everyone. But also some more simple concerns, like what actually is Uldir and what on earth is going on? Who is this and this and this? Why am I killing them? And why can no one decide if G'huun is an actual real life old god or not? And you may be especially wondering this if you're an Alliance player, because thanks to BfA's otherwise splendid separate leveling continents, it's possible you have absolutely no idea of the answers to any of those questions. And to be honest, even if you're a Horde player who has put in their shift on Zandalar, you may well need a little bit of clarification too. So in this video, we're going to be giving you the lowdown on Uldir, the in-game story leading up to it, the history behind it, working out who these things are and why they're here, and discussing the biggest question behind the final boss. Is G'huun a real old god, and why does it matter? Story-wise, this does not take anything that happens after the raid into account, and only covers the stuff that we knew before the doors of the raid opened. So in that sense, it's spoiler-free. So join us as we get to the bottom, metaphorically and literally, of the first raid of Battle for Azeroth, Uldir, okay? Go, 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 go. So if there's one thing that I learned from Blizzard in the build-up to Battle for Azeroth, it's that this is an expansion all about the faction war and all about the story. And you know what? I believe them, because let's be honest, it's not about Elemental Shaman, is it? But the build-up to BfA has given us more honest-to-goodness storytelling content than any other, whether that be via comics, or novels, or animations, or cinematics, or cutscenes, or even sometimes playing the actual game. And that has continued in the opening weeks of the X-Pack itself, because Uldir as a location and as a raid has actually been built up very nicely, with a storyline and events happening over 3 leveling zones, multiple interconnecting characters and events, and some big set pieces to give you a pretty compelling reason to be heading into Uldir, and some experience of who you'll be facing there, if you're Horde, because Alliance players got none of that. It was all gar and woo and splash and I love you mum, which was awesome, fair play, but to go from I love necklaces to I will eat everyone might be a bit of a jump. So before we go in depth about Uldir itself, here's a quick recap of the Horde experience to get there. When you arrive in Zuldazar after rescuing Princess Talanji, we're introduced to Rastakhan, the legendary king who has ruled for over 200 years, thinks everything is fine and refuses to listen to his daughter or bother much with the Horde, but for some reason will totally listen to the most obviously evil royal advisor in the history of any media, Zul. Or okay, possibly the second most obviously evil advisor. Honestly, what is it with these leaders and their terrible character judgment? To try and get in with the king, we head out to the various leveling zones. Talanji sees the biggest threat to be the blood trolls in Nazmir. So we pop out there and we see that yes, those blood trolls are absolute crazies, corrupting or killing off the local lower and making thousands of blood sacrifices in an attempt to awaken something called G'huun, who we know only as a blood god. But it turns out it's even worse than that, because after putting back an old Titan keeper we find lying around, he tells us that there is a large old god presence within Nazmir, and that'll be G'huun, held in place by 3 seals. This one here that's been totally overgrown and is no longer working, one in Vol'dun which was destroyed ages ago, more on that in a minute, and of course this one slap bang in the middle of your lovely safe capital city, which is why the blood trolls are gathering their strength for an attack on the city, to destroy that final seal and release G'huun. And this is where it gets serious, okay, because that's where Bane Bloodhoof is. He never hurt anyone, you stay away from my lovely cow, you diabolically weirdly sexy trolls. So we gather a dream team of Deathlower and Froglower and Tortollans and Goblins to strike right at the heart of their forces, and okay, I have no idea what this is, but let's blow the shit out of it and hooray, victory! Excellent, so about those other seals, the one in Vol'dun was destroyed thousands of years ago by the Sithrax Mythrax the Unraveler, a huge old god servant who luckily was stopped before he could destroy the other barriers by the snake lower Sethralis, sacrificing herself in the process. The Sithrax Mythrax was sealed within the Great Pyramid before the dodgy faithless Sethrax baddies, together with the Zandalari slaver Yak-Rosette, decided they want to revive him to finish what he started. They're also trying to corrupt the spirit of Sethralis for good measure, which we stop in the dungeon mission. Unfortunately, we are not quite so successful in our efforts to stop the return of Mythrax, who, by the way, is a Sithrax. Because, yeah, we defeat Jack Rosette in the nick of time, but frankly, we should have gone for the head. So now there's a great big Sithrax called Mythrax on the loose, but don't worry about that, because back in Zuldazar, Rastakhan is sending us to sort out minor disturbances around the city and port until we find out that those disturbances all seem to be orchestrated by the same person. And when we get back to warn the king, it's too late, because yes, Zul was totally evil after all. I actually can't believe it. We escape to safety with the injured king, who dies, but you know, we're best mates with one Samdi now, fall into a massive trap in Ataldazar, which results in the death of the lower of kings, Razan, but you know, we're best mates with one Samdi now, and launch a counterattack on the city where we kill Zul, but totally forget to do anything about the city-sized Sithrax, whose name I can't remember now, destroying the final seal and releasing Gahun. So Gahun is free now, everyone. Everything's gone to shit. Everything you did in the last 3 zones was essentially useless, and now we've got an old Titan facility to raid to get rid of the imminent danger before it decides to come and eat us all, and you've only got 2 rerolls a week to do it with, because this is the worst expansion ever, official. So as a player, that's why we've been told we're heading into Uldir. Now, of course, the question raises itself, if I were an Alliance player, what I might be tempted to do here is not bother defeating the danger in Uldir, allowing Gahun to become free and eat everyone on Zandalar, and awesome, I think we just won the war, expansion over, I love you mum, but apparently that's not an option. So into Uldir we go, but what exactly is Uldir, and what's inside it? So as explained to us by our new Titan Watcher pal in Nazmir, Uldir is a Titan facility which was built specifically to research old gods and work out what they are and what makes them tick. I mean, I can tell you straight off the bat because I've read Chronicle. The old gods are creations of the Void Lords, the super powerful, terrifying life forms who would really love to consume just about everything. And think a great way to do that would be to find an unborn Titan world soul and corrupt it, creating a servant so powerful that they could never be stopped. And their way of doing this is to shoot out parasitic entities called old gods into space in all directions and hope that they land on a world soul planet, where they can burrow in, make themselves at home, and get to work corrupting. That's exactly what happened on Azeroth, and as far as we know, we had 4 of them land here. The Titans killed one and imprisoned the others, and as well as creating Titan constructs to protect and nurture the planet, also built Uldir to learn more about their new enemy through research and experimentation. Unfortunately, the Titans had obviously never watched seriously like any movie ever, so had no clue what a terrible idea this was and how guaranteed it is to backfire, because it was through these experiments that the Watchers accidentally created Gahun, who is by all accounts an old god, although more on that later. When they realised what they'd done, they sealed him nice and safe behind those 3 seals, which was another brilliant idea which could never possibly go wrong through anything like, oh, I don't know, literally it just getting a bit overgrown. So of course, within the facility, there are 2 main types of being that we are going to encounter: the Titan constructs in charge and the things they were experimenting on. And both can be pretty dangerous. Far too dangerous for me to try and do myself, in fact, which is why this episode we have extra special big thanks to our friends Fatboss TV, who have kindly let us use footage from their incredible video boss guides, which are the best video boss guides. So if you want video boss guides on how to beat the bosses that you see in this video, well, you know where to look. There's a link to their channel in the description below, even though you know their channel anyway. We're going to put a link to WoWhead's Uldir guide down there as well, just in case you prefer the written words. Like, for example, first boss Taloc, who really shouldn't be here at all. His job was to patrol the surrounding area outside of Nazmir, cleansing any signs of corruption that may have seeped out of the operational facility before time took its toll, and the near inoperational death robot was corrupted by the blood trolls to help them cause shit before we stopped them, and yeah, well, that's why he's inside Uldir now. In fact, there's a rather excellent moment in this first fight where you realise that the encounter is taking place on a giant elevator, which is now descending into the underground facility, and we can see when we get there that Gahun's corruption is already well underway down here. This is where we'll meet Mother, who is not your average Titan Watcher. She is the matron of tenacity, herald of endless research. She's the actual scientist in charge of all of the old god experiments that happened down here and have since gone terribly wrong. And here's the thing, Mother is no security robot like Taloc, and actually she wants the same thing as the players, to cleanse the facility of corruption and get rid of the diabolical evil at its core. And she tells you exactly which consoles throughout Uldir that you're going to have to activate to start the re-origination drive purge protocol to make that happen. So she actually really helps your raid out, and in fact functions as your narrator through the rest of the instance. Eventually. Before any of that though, you're going to have to go through a double quick quarantine and sterilization program, and you know, hopefully you'll all still be alive by the time you're done. With your entry into the facility itself complete, you can now start encountering some proper old gods, or fake old gods, or just general scientific horrors, whatever, like the Fetid Devourer, which is frankly, weird. Because to find out about the old gods, the Titan Watchers conducted research on loads of different life forms, because they're Titan Watchers, they don't give a shit. And something there are lots of in Nazmir are lower. So you can see that the Fetid Devourer's heads are from lion, bird, and reptile lowers, who were all experimented on, died when the experiments went wrong, and then just thrown away and forgotten. The encounter room for this fight is basically the garbage chute, but like the biological garbage chute. Now, it's unclear whether it was the Titan constructs that thought it would be fun to patch 3 lower together, or whether that was G'huun's doing, but it was definitely our blood god that reanimated it and souped it up all ready for eating you. And this is our first proper reminder that what the Titans were doing in Uldir was pretty shady, to be honest. The Medicine Ethics Committee will definitely have some concerns about their methods, and it definitely backfired here. Another experiment gone horribly wrong is Vectis, who is actually a really great reference to one of the most infamous happenings in WoW history. The plague of corrupted blood killed countless trolls and began one of the most terrifying periods in Zandallar's history. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's because corrupted blood is the debuff that Hakar the Soulflayer puts on players in Zul Reborn, which found its way out of that vanilla dungeon on Hunter and Warlock pets and started the corrupted blood pandemic that caused chaos on servers for a whole week, and which was studied by epidemiologists as an example of how real human populations might deal with a pandemic IRL. And Vectis is quite literally the corrupted blood debuff. Finally, they made it into a boss of its own, because the Titan Watchers isolated this disease to study it, which, because they'd never seen any movie ever, they had no idea was a really stupid plan. Because as the facility fell to ruin, the disease obviously escaped its containment and managed to infect a sample of G'huun's own blood, which was being kept nearby. Because seriously, Uldir really needs to reassess its health and safety best practice training. This is not okay for any workplace. They are asking to get sued right now. And Vectis is the unholy product of that union. Obviously, this fight involves lots of debuffs, and frankly, if you can't sneak them out of the raid and spread them around Stormwind, then honestly, what's even the point? So the Titans dropped the ball big time in Uldir, but one thing they can't be blamed for is Zek'voz. And Zek'voz is no experiment, no hybrid. Here is a bona fide, genuine old god herald. After the Sundering, which separated the continents of Kalimdor and turned Zandallar into an island, N'Zoth went on something of a recruitment drive, enlisting Ashara and the Highborn into the fold and creating the Naga, but also setting his sights on headhunting the Zandalari trolls, a responsibility he gave to Zek'voz, who arrived on the coast of Zandallar with the intention of doing all those classic old god type things, tempting them, manipulating them, mind controlling, or maybe just eating them, the usual. And he probably would have succeeded too, if only he'd thought to check that there were no Titan research facilities to deal with when he got there. This is why you always read the reviews, guys. One glance at the Nazmir TripAdvisor page would have told him that this was a place jam-packed with Titan defenses specifically programmed to home in on old god type things like him. So basically, he got there, instantly got captured, and has been held prisoner in Uldir for the last 10,000 years. You're a rubbish herald, Zek'voz. But it's in the third wing that we get to the real lore big boys of the raid, like Zul Reborn. Yes, this guy again. And whatever you may think of Zul, you can't say we don't have a reason to want to kill him. Since we've known him, he's resurrected the Thunder King in Mists of Pandaria, he stabbed Rastakhan in the back like 5 minutes ago. He's basically a power-crazed would-be dictator who wants to re-establish an all-powerful troll empire and isn't afraid to sacrifice a few lower and pledges allegiance to a world-eating old god to do it. Of course, Rastakhan killed him in the assault on Dazara Lore, but now he is being reborn by G'huun, who is filling him with its own blood, which is where we find him. Now, of course, the cinematic where Rastakhan gets all 300 on him is really cool, but just think, if we'd just taken him prisoner, or hell, even just properly disposed of the body, we could have saved ourselves a pretty long boss encounter here. I kind of think old Rasta should be doing this fight for us, to be honest. After Zul comes another familiar face, the Sithrax, Mythrax the Unraveler. And you may remember Sithrax the Mythrax from such classic moments as being raised at the end of the Vol'dun storyline, or destroying the final seal of G'huun whilst being truly, terrifyingly, ridiculously massive. But you'll be pleased to know that he's not as big as all that by the time he gets back to Uldir to hang with his master. I mean, I say that, he's still pretty big, to be honest. And of course, it's not just Mythrax you'll have to deal with, but his living squid weapon thing, Zalze, who I actually don't think gets enough credit in the whole destroying the seal thing. We've already talked about Mythrax, but it's fair to say this raid has now gone full-on old god at this point, as we move on to the final bad, G'huun. But, and this is kind of the point of the video really, what is G'huun? We talked a lot about the old gods so far, but is that an accurate description of what this thing that everyone is so terrified of really is? Well, he's described as an old god by the Titan Watcher in Nazmir, and the Titan Watcher should know, shouldn't he? But let's look at the true definition of an old god. A definition I rather cleverly included at the very beginning of this video to set this bit up. The old gods were created by the Void Lords. They were flung across the universe where they landed on planets, burrowed into them to corrupt any Titan world souls that might be in there. Well, G'huun wasn't made by the Void Lords. He wasn't flung across the universe. He never landed on a planet. He's obviously nowhere near as old as actual old gods, but more importantly, he shows absolutely no desire to corrupt the world soul of Azeroth. G'huun is pure, single-minded parasite. His only purpose is to consume and destroy, which is a subtle but very important difference in his MO from the other old gods. His only purpose is to spread his underrot everywhere he can, including to other planets, and rot them. The other old gods want to give their masters a void-corrupted Titan world soul super soldier. G'huun wants to give them a dead husk. Not that he'd care though, because unlike the other old gods, G'huun doesn't ultimately answer to the Void Lords. He's kind of independent in that respect, and as such, a lot more selfish. I would describe him as kind of a Frankenstein's monster, except he's not, because he's not the result of the Titans purposely trying to genetically engineer an old god. He was an accident that happened when they experimented on the old god's unending, ravenous need to corrupt. So he is just one facet of what makes up an old god made manifest. He is one singular ingredient of an old god isolated and made whole, which if anything is even worse. Imagine if you isolated all the charm and sexiness from Idris Elba and got rid of all the other parts. You'd have, well, Idris Elba, it'd be exactly the same. Okay, that's not a great example, but you see my point, right? And that's what we're dealing with here. G'huun is made of the same stuff as an old god. That's why Hezrel, the Titan Watcher construct, detects him and identifies him as such. But if you have a detector programmed to tell you when you're near horses, it's gonna start buzzing when you buy IKEA meatballs. And it's not wrong, but it's not quite what you meant, you know? So I think G'huun does not fit the criteria of being an actual old god just because he's made of the same matter. Like, I share 99% of my DNA with a cat, but I'm not a cat, and I know that for a fact because I can't lick my own balls no matter how much I try. Why did that have to be the 0.1% that was missing? But there's another important difference between G'huun and the old gods, and it's maybe the most interesting of all: undeath. Because old gods and undeath don't mix. They don't like it. There's some compelling evidence that suggests the Void may be scared of it, and that undeath may even be immune to their corruption somehow. Curse of Flesh is, after all, a way that old gods make things easier to corrupt, and dead things don't have living flesh. There's many theories flying around at the moment, including on this very channel, that undeath and undead magic may very well be the eventual key to defeating the Void Lords. Theories that seem all the more plausible when you consider that the Naru have recently created their own Lightborn undead in Kalia Menethil. And as we know, the Light's ultimate purpose is to defeat the Void, and they obviously think that having some undead of their own is going to help them with that. So old gods don't like undeath. Fact. G'huun loves it. As we quest through Nazmir, Samdi is annoyed that G'huun is stealing souls from under his nose, and in Zul Reborn, the Blood God is creating his own undead servant for kicks. So what exactly is going on here? We've had so many hints about Arthas, Bolvar, the fact that there is more going on with Sylvanas than we know about, Kalia Menethil, of course, Samdi, Helya. So much is pointing to the rise in importance of the role that the undead play in WoW. Is this just another part of that? Of course, by the time you watch this video, someone will have probably already completed Uldir, and if there's any kind of cinematic or cutscene or general revelation at the end of that, then I guess we're gonna have to talk about it in a separate video. But for now, what are your thoughts? Is G'huun a real old god? Is there a significance to his use of undeath? If you're an Alliance player, how connected do you feel to this raid, having experienced so little of the story leading up to it? And do you suspect that the next raid will be based around things that you've already played through on the Alliance side? Spoiler, I think it probably will be. Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make them happen, because without them, they wouldn't happen. So thanks, guys, for being the real stars. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Fatboss TV. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.